This movie was nothing like Shaun of the Dead. Everyone who said that to me is a liar. I don't know why I watched Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz beforehand. Because Last Night in Soho is not like those films. But it's as funny and exciting as Baby Driver.
It's funnier than Baby Driver.
There's a lot more action. The audio on my phone was so messed up for the Dune review that I said, screw it, we're putting an extension cable on the microphone, and I'm just gonna use this Rode mic and talk into that today. So yeah, guys, we just saw Last Night in Soho. John, why don't you tell them what the movie's about? What did you know about the movie before you watched it? Let's go with that.
Yeah, okay. So basically, Thomasin McKenzie plays Eloise, who is moving to London town to pursue her dream of becoming a fashion designer, and whilst there, feeling like an outsider, she stumbles down some rabbit holes into the past that lead her to fantasize but also kind of get lost in echoes of the past involving this particular up-and-coming singer.
Yeah, we won't ruin details of the plot, but they set up very early, like in the first 5 minutes of the movie, they pretty much explain that she has an ability to communicate with the beyonds, essentially, right?
Yeah, she sees visions of her mother.
Yeah, so she can
like
essentially connect to spirits, ghosts, okay?
She's in tune with the spirit world.
So I think knowing that little fact and you watch the trailer, you're like, okay, this makes a lot more sense now. And yeah, I was really looking forward to this movie. Initial thoughts right off the bat. I would say that the first 2/3 of this movie I was very much in love with. I really didn't know exactly how this was all going because I have this one plot here about Eloise. She wants to get out of the countryside and go into fashion design school. And then it becomes a little bit like Mean Girls meets the movie 8th Grade. It's just this like social anxiety film. And the social anxiety only gets more ramped up because she reveres, she's very fond of the 1960s world and the way how a lot of us are kind of fond of the times of old with the fashion, the music, the spirit. So when she starts connecting to Anya Taylor-Joy's character from the past, living in those visions, you get a lot of these really cool visuals where it keeps switching in and out of being Eloise and Anya Taylor-Joy in ways where sometimes I get pulled out in the right way of how the hell did they make this? Why do they do that in one shot? What the, like, there's so much great imagery there. I love how it becomes this tale of obsession, how it's helping her out with her fashion and it's helping her grow as a human being. And you can see that this is becoming a positive experience for her, but if you watch the trailer, obviously it starts taking a really dark, negative path, and that's where a lot of things can be spoiled here, because boy does this movie get bonkers.
Yes, it does.
You know, it's funny because James Wan did Malignant, which had that gelato inspiration,
That's
as
right.
I call it.
Milk and eggs, bitch.
Milk and eggs, man. Here, you get some of that inspiration, but the Edgar Wright fashion.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's interesting to see like two horror filmmakers do that here.
Do a modern take on Jello, with very different results, and yet somehow I think this movie is a little less bonkers across the board than Malignant, but they both reach a level of insanity.
Yes, it gets insane. It's one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I will say though, that I think the last third of the movie, there's a lot about it I really, really like. And there's some stuff in there that I'm like, a little too much. That's the best way I can tell you
it's
guys.
A lot to swallow.
It goes, it becomes a little twist heavy, and it seems like some plot stuff is like, okay, I guess it was only there for twist. But there's so much else in there that I really like a lot, whether that be visually, character-wise, like the performances all around from beginning to end are very solid. I know John's more of a Edgar Wright fanatic than I am. So what'd you think, being the man you are with Edgar Wright?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie, and I mean, as far as his filmography goes, obviously we're sort of at this point now. The Cornetto trilogy and Scott Pilgrim kind of occupy one phase of his career, and then Baby Driver, to me, I really liked it, but it does play on a lot of things that I know he's good at and that he flourishes in and excels at, and tonally that movie is a bit more familiar, whereas this gave me what felt like him stretching his legs into something that's much more moody, much more deliberate, that does have some of his earmarks but used in slightly different ways. I mean, his knack for visual energy and editing is really great. And yeah, like you said, there are moments here where he uses those wipes that he loves to do and those camera tricks, but in these seamless, fluid, and really eerie ways where, yeah, you find yourself going, how on earth is this choreography? Is this like stitching? What are you doing here? And yeah, as a movie, I thought it was a very personal, I like, and I think you do too, those movies where you start with a relatable character who goes on a descent,
I love descent
further
movies.
and further into madness, losing themselves, their grip on reality. And I think Thomasin McKenzie really carries that amazingly. And there's also a really great supporting cast. I gotta say, I have personal appreciation for the use of shrill sound as a horror instrument. And not all movies do that because it's harsh and it, has an effect on you. But I think this movie has an exquisite sound design, especially with how obviously Edgar Wright loves to use his music cues, but also the use of echoes and street sounds and things like that, looping and mixing audio. Like, this really does feel like it has a soundscape of a movie. And so, that combined with all the visual elements, similar, I'm gonna have to kind of reflect on the culmination in the third act, see how I feel about some of the technical aspects of how the story wraps itself up. But for the most part, I really liked what the horror is getting at without saying too much about it. And there are elements of this movie that are more overtly horror and more overtly like a haunting ghost movie than I was expecting.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta agree with you on that, because there was a portion, because you're settled in with this movie so much. One thing that Edgar Wright does so well here is he literally wraps you up in this film that is two films that eventually becomes pretty much one film.
Yeah.
Because you got two stories that you're telling. You're telling the story of a young girl, first year in college, going in for fashion design, is a complete outsider. And then you got the story of Anya Taylor-Joy, who meets Matt Smith in the 60s, and her pursuit of, big entertainment dreams. It deals with a lot of very mature themes. And so obviously you'll be cutting back and forth between the two while Eloise is experiencing the tale of the 60s. But you really got two completely different stories here. And you're watching how they intersect and how obsession and paranoia overtakes.
But it never really felt like a horror movie. But then if this movie was divided into fourths, I would say like 2/4 of the, not exactly 50% of the movie, but towards the latter half, you're like, okay, no, this is definitely a horror movie. This is like direct horror movie.
This is a fascinating year for because I feel like Malignant is oddly, while they are very different, a good touchstone, because it is that like female-led, like many giallo films are, going to school. It's like it has a lot of those.
I need to remind you, it's gelato.
Gelato. Milk and eggs, bitch. That movie, Malignant, takes it and it puts it through this filter of like a skeezy, grindhousey, almost action movie by the end of it, whereas this one, I felt like takes that giallo format and then adds the psychological horror that those movies also have, but then almost went in a direction that reminded me of a James Wan kind of ghosty funhouse movie.
Yes, because you don't want to spoil too much, but that's what I found fascinating about this. I mean, if we are doing the comparisons here, Malignant still felt like a James Wan movie to me. This sure has qualities of Edgar Wright, but I was less so with Baby Driver. I'm very much aware I'm watching an Edgar Wright movie. Pretty much every Edgar Wright movie, I'm aware of Edgar Wright. This was the first movie I've seen of his where I was not aware of Edgar Wright for a lot of it.
And it's I think that's one of my favorite elements, is that this is kind of what I was craving. Again, not to say that I didn't enjoy and really like Baby Driver, but this one gave me like, oh, you're stretching your legs, you're expanding your palette. I can still see the Edgar Wright, but if you just showed it to me and didn't tell me who directed it, I might not be as quick to guess it.
Yeah. It deals with some pretty mature themes, and there were times where I was like, if you go this direction in the plot, I'm gonna be kind of mad at you, movie. But they managed to handle a lot of things very well. So I would say, like, be prepared, because there are some sensitive subject matter, to say the least. My one real gripe is kind of a nitpick, because I still like this character. There's this dude who like has a crush on the main character in the movie. He just never wavers. Like he never falters.
The best guy.
He's the best
in
guy
a movie filled with not good guys.
Man, this guy just puts up with anything this woman puts up with.
He just really must love her that much.
No matter what happens, no matter all the crazy shit she goes through here, he's just always like, "You okay?" Even when
what can I do for you?
Even when bad stuff happens to him, he's like,
You okay?
He's not concerned for himself in the least. And I really like that character. I really like that actor. But I also was thinking throughout, just like, this is just the best guy. This is just the only great guy in London.
The longer it went, the more distracting it became.
Yeah, I'll give you that. He doesn't, because of how gray a lot of the characters get drawn and how much trauma is on display and how much sort of cultural, you're dealing with the swinging 60s, and part of this movie takes that, a thing a lot of people say now, which is, man, I wish I lived during that time, and then it turns it inside out and goes,
how terrible
I don't think you want to live in that time, because there's a lot of nasty behavior going on behind the curtains of all the glamorous nightlife that you idolize.
And then when it comes to like social commentary, it shows you that like, hey, those times, everything that we deal with today that we are more vocal about, it's been existent for pretty much ever.
Yes.
And it was even existent in the times that we thought were like just perfect.
Idyllic. Yeah.
I would say like I'm like 4.5 out of 5 or some shit. All right.
I'm with you, G. We're back in sync.
All right, we're back in
After
sync.
Halloween and Eternals, we're back.
We're back.
Back to sharing opinions.
Thank you guys for being here, and we'll catch you guys soon.